Hello again, hope everyone is doing well. Today's video is going to be a breakdown of my top 10 AFL rookie card sales and eBay series. I'm going to be looking at the 10 weeks I did it and analyze it a bit, some key takeaways which I found pretty useful and interesting as well. But to start us off, like usual, I'm going to look at the eBay sales data, and I'm taking it from the 18th of September all the way to 22nd of December. I finished the series in mid-November-ish, but I think it's interesting to look at the whole period up until December, because obviously there was Supremacy Rookie in between there as well. So if you look at the table, we start off pretty steady, and then there was a big jump both in the average sold price and the total sold when Optimum 2022 came out. And this is just about when I started tracking this data. And then from then it's steadily declined once the release cooled off a bit. And then you look at the very end of the year, there's a big peak in average sold price, which pretty much is the same as the Optimum peak, which is clearly the Supremacy Rookie when that came out. But you can see the total sales stayed pretty low. And that's because Supremacy Rookie was a very lowly produced set but had an elevated price point. So that didn't contribute too much to the total amount of sales, but the sales prices definitely increased during this period. Okay, so now into analyzing the data. The first key takeaway is the card that sold the most over these 10 weeks, and that was the Paddy Dangerfield Gold DPS from 2008 Classic. This one sold 6 times and it had an average selling price of $132. This one sold a lot after Geelong won the grand final, and it probably added about $30 to $40 in its price, somewhere between 20 to 40 during this time. And because it sold 6 times, you can be pretty confident that the price is now at about $130. And this is very important in the AFL hobby, I think, just because so many cards aren't liquid, as in they don't sell very often. And this can be because no one's buying them, but it can also be because they just don't come on the market very often. So it's very hard to know the true price of a card. And that, I think, is a very important concept to think about in AFL cards, where you might see a card sell for $300, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the fair value of the card. Now, in this case with the Dangerfield, you'd be pretty confident that $130 is a fair price. But with other cards that sell once in a while, you can't just take one comp and say that is the price that it should be. But that's going to be a common thread between this whole video, I think, because although these are actual prices that are sold, you do have to take them with a grain of salt, and I don't want people to think that just because I'm reporting this is the perfect indicator of price or value, which is definitely not the case. But moving on to my next point, we've got the biggest droppers, the cards that drop the most in value over this 10-week period. And the first one, the biggest drop of all, is Sam Darcy and his Platinum DPS. It's no surprise that a card like this is in the number one spot, simply because these big cards generally fall a lot after the first few weeks of release. So the first sale was on October 16th, and that was for $709. And then only 2 weeks later, one sold for $480. That's a 32% decline, or $229 in real dollar value. In number 2 spot, we've got the Jack Riewoldt DPS from 2007 Supreme. This may be a bit surprising, but when this sold for $299, I did say that I thought this was a bit high and I'd value it more about $200, but I think there was a couple that sold for $299. The latest one, or the last one that sold for that price, was October 9th, 2022, and then it sold for $203 on November 20th. That's a 32% drop again, or $96 in dollar value. Third, we've got the Connor Rozee DPS 2019 Dominance, sold for $558 on November 6th, and then $402 on November 20th. That's a 28% swing, or $156. And like I mentioned with the Dangerfield, you just have to mention that the AFL card liquidity is low, so these swings are actually very normal in AFL. In other hobbies, when there's more buyers and more sellers, the price discovery is a lot more accurate. They come together, so the buy-sell spread isn't this high, but it's very normal for cards to swing $100 between transactions in the AFL market. Moving on to the fourth biggest, Josh Kipkis, in very much the same vein as the Sam Darcy, sold for $707 out the gate, and then 2 weeks later sold for $538. That's a 24% decline, or $169 decline. And the fifth biggest drop was the Bontempelli DPS from 2014 Honours 1. This one sold for $367 on October 9th, and then $309 on October 30th. So that's a loss of $58, or nearly 16%. First of all, that's very surprising that a card like that would drop. But then again, it's only a $58 decline. So it shows that lots of AFL cards didn't actually drop a whole lot, at least those that sold within that 10-week period. But a 16% drop for a top 5 biggest drop is actually very encouraging for the hobby, I think, in a time where there's lots of cards being printed and people are losing a bit of confidence in footy card prices. For a 16% drop to be the top 5 worst, I think that's pretty good. So now let's move on to the biggest gainers. I should mention that this is ranked by percentage increase or decrease, not dollar value, although the dollar value is also important. So in number 1 place, the biggest gainer in these 10 weeks was the Zach Merritt DPS 2014 Honours 1. So this card sold firstly on September 18th, 2022 for $160, and then on October 30th it sold for $305. That's almost doubling. That's a 90% increase in this time, or $144. I do have to mention that one is online right now for about $200, so it seems like this $300 was a high sale, although it definitely went through. I wouldn't say that this $300 isn't completely indicative of the price, but still at $160 on September 18th, I think the buyer got a pretty good deal. In second place, we've got Paddy Cripps' DPS from the same release, and this sold for $457 for the week ending September 18th, 2022. I think I've been saying that that's the date they've sold, but that was the week in which they sold. And this card sold again in November, the week ending November the 6th, for $778. Similarly, I think you can get this card cheaper now, but that was probably peak Brownlow hype when there weren't too many on the market, and it rose by 70% over this time, over about a 2-month period, or $321. So that's a big gain. In third spot, we've got Sam Walsh's rookie from 2019 Dominance. This one sold for $124 on November 6th, and then sold for $191 on November 20th. And that is a 55% rise, or $67. This really shows that you can flip cards if you want, and especially these more modern cards, which I'd tell people to stay away from usually. If you are very good at reading the market, or happy to jump in and out and have it like a good eBay store, there's definitely opportunities like this where you can make $70 in a couple weeks. In fourth spot, we've got Dustin Martin and his rookie from 2010 Champions. This one sold for $111 the week ending September 18th, and then $156 a couple months later, and that is a 41% increase, or $45. This one, once again, I think you can get a bit cheaper online at the moment, but during the 10 weeks, that was the increase. And finally, in fifth place, we've got Nick Dacos and his Platinum DPS. This one sold for $1868 as soon as the release came out. That's the week ending October 16th. And then the next week, one sold for $2200. So I think this one is a tad misleading because the card just came out and it had that natural kind of violent swings at the start of the release, but it still happened. If you bought it a week before and then you sold the same card a week later, you probably would have made a couple $100. So this was an 18% increase, or $332. The key takeaways for this, I think, number one, if you're happy to jump in and out the market, there's always opportunities, but you have to be quick, because like I said, lots of these cards sold for this elevated amount, and then people probably saw that they sold for this amount, so more cards hit the market, bringing the price down. But if you can time the market really well, there are opportunities, even for cards which I think are hugely overvalued, like the Dacos Platinum. you can still make money on them, and that in the short term, there's no dispute about that. I just look at it from a much more longer lens, but there are always opportunities in this market. The second thing is that the percentage increases were actually a lot higher than the percentage decreases, and that definitely surprised me. I thought, especially for the Optimum 2022 cards, we would see much higher decreases than increases. But yeah, you can see like the Zach Merritt, the Paddy Cripps, Sam Walsh, and Dustin Martin, slightly older cards, they all saw increases higher than the biggest drop. So they all went up more than the Sam Darcy went down, percentage wise at least. So that's very interesting. Okay, moving on to the next section is the top 10 highest sales for those 10 weeks. I'll try and get through these pretty quick, but in 10th place, we've got the Horn Francis Platinum. That sold for $655. In 9th place, we've got Dustin Martin and his Platinum Draft Pick from 2010 Prestige. That one sold for $669. Josh Kipkis in number 8 with his Platinum DPS. That sold for $707. Sam Darcy in 7th place at $709. His Platinum DPS. In 6th place, Paddy Cripps, that DPS sale we just talked about, for $778. Rounding out the top 5, we've got Nick Dacos and his Gold DPS. That one sold for $800. In 4th place, Sam Walsh and his DPS from 2019 Dominance for $810. And then for the top 3, 3rd place, Dustin Martin DPS. This one sold for $856. 2nd place, Trent Cotcham, that huge sale we saw during those 10 weeks for his Platinum DPS. That one sold for $954. And for this list, I'm not doing any doubles because I think there was another Trent Cotcham Platinum that sold for about $800 that would have been on this list, but I'm not doing doubles. That brings us to number 1, and it is Nick Dacos and his Platinum DPS for $2,200. So we'll see how that one ages. I'm not going to say any more about that. What I am going to get into is the 5 buys which I see as the best buys over these 10 weeks. And this is going to be my final segment for this video today. But going from 5 to 1, the 5th buy I like the most is the Dustin Martin rookie from 2010 Champions. This sale was $111 for the week ending September 18th. This card's actually going a bit cheaper right now on eBay because so many came up. They might have already been all bought up. But at the time making this video, I think there's a couple you can snatch up for this price or slightly lower. But I think going forward, $111 is actually a pretty good price for this card. I always thought it was out of 1,000, but on further research, it's actually out of 750. So doing the math, seeing as the DPS is out of 400 and selling for about $900, I think $111 is a very good price right now. It's not a steal by any means, but it has long-term opportunity, and that's all I can ask for in a card. The kind of card that can go up 5-10% every year from here on in, and I think this has that quality. The 4th best buy, and this is a more modern card because I know I always concentrate on the older ones, but I thought this was a pretty reasonable buy under the circumstances, and this is the Horn Francis Gold DPS. It sold for $142 in the week ending the 20th of November. And out of the new cards, I think it can, and I think it is already cheaper than this. But out of all the new cards, this has the best prospects, I think. And I just have a bit of a feeling about Horn Francis. I think he might come out next year in a different environment and really show what he's made of. And I think his cards can turn around very quickly, especially if Port as a team goes really deep into finals. So I think this is the best buy out of all the modern cards. Top 3 in 3rd spot, we've got Bontempelli and his DPS. This was the lowest sale for this one at $309. Just like the Dustin Martin, I don't think this is an absolute steal, but this is a very safe bet in my opinion, and it's a card that can rise 10% every year from here on in. In very much the same vein, we've got the Selwood DPS, Joel Selwood. This one sold for $210. I think one just sold for about $180, $190. So this is definitely market value at the moment. But once again, a very safe place to put your money in this market. And the number 1 best buy I see is the Dustin Martin DPS from 2010 Prestige. Anytime you buy this card for under $900, I think is a pretty good price. This one especially was a single digit number. I know I went to Matt's card shop, so shout out to him. He has his own channel and he has a lot of great content, including the pickup of this card. And also there was an eBay coupon going around. So this card I could have picked up for about $800, assuming there wasn't going to be a bidding war after this amount. But I really do think this is a good price for this card. It could go down further if Dustin Martin and Richmond have a very negative year next year, but I think it is a good pickup for the time being. So that's my 10-week breakdown. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys are having a great holiday season, and I'll see you in a video soon. Thanks.